The top 5 most haunted dolls in the world. Number 5. Okiku the doll. Supposedly possessed by the spirit of a child, Okiku has captured the curiosity of the people across Japan for decades. This legendary doll, named after the girl who long ago used to play with it, is 40 centimeters tall, is wearing a traditional Japanese kimono, has beady black eyes, and shoulder-length black hair. It is said that the doll was originally purchased in 1918 by a 17-year-old boy named Eiichi Suzuki while visiting Sapporo for a marine expedition. He bought the doll as a souvenir for his 2-year-old sister Okiku. The young girl loved the doll and played with it every day, but the following year she died suddenly of a cold. Shortly after Okiku's passing, the family placed the doll in the household altar and prayed to it every day in her memory. Sometime later, they noticed that the hair had started to grow. This was seen as a sign that the girl's restless spirit had taken refuge in the doll. In 1938, the Suzuki family moved and they placed the doll in the care of the Menenji Temple, where it has remained ever since. According to the temple, when they first received the doll, she initially had short cropped hair, but over time it seemed to grow. In fact, it grew down to the doll's knees. In an attempt to preserve the doll, the hair is periodically trimmed. If you visit the Menenji Temple today, you will see photos surrounding the doll showing the growth. To this day, nobody has ever been able to fully explain why the doll's hair continues to grow. However, one scientific examination of the doll supposedly concluded that the hair was indeed that of a young child. Number 4. Joliet the doll. According to the legend, this doll has been passed down from generation to generation of expecting mothers. Each mother who comes into possession of the doll appears to be cursed with having 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. Unfortunately, the son isn't expected to live long. Each boy only lives to be about 3 days old before succumbing to unknown circumstances. It is said that the doll traps the souls of the boys within its body, wherein they are expected to remain until Judgment Day. Legend has it that it began when a woman received the doll as a pregnancy gift from a friend. This friend and the woman had a bitter relationship for some unknown reason, and it is believed that she placed a curse on the doll out of jealousy. 3 days after her son was born, he was stricken with a fever and shortly died. Sometime after the death of her son, she heard crying that seemed to be emanating from the doll. Upon closer inspection, she concluded that her son's soul was imprisoned within the doll. Since then, those who have inherited the doll treat Joliet as if the doll were their son, never attempting to dispose of it. Number 3. The doll named Harold. In 2003, an aspiring young filmmaker put a composition doll he claimed was haunted up for auction on eBay. The listing became the subject of websites, articles, and discussions all around the world. In the ad, a video was shown in which the doll's arms supposedly moved, as well as it mouthed the word "here" or "Harold," according to Greg, the filmmaker trying to sell the doll. From here on out, the doll would be forever remembered as Harold. What started out as an attempt to make $30 or $40 off a doll that was clearly worth nothing more than $9 or $10 ended up producing a bid of $700. Unfortunately for Greg, the bidder failed to pay for the doll, and so he relisted it. Greg freely admitted that what he was doing was a hoax to Kathy, a childhood friend of his older brother, who was bidding on Greg's second auction of the doll. Kathy didn't care because she was hoping to capitalize on the sensationalism around the doll and flip it for a profit herself after keeping it for 3 or 4 months. After winning the auction, strange events started happening almost immediately. Not knowing whether the doll was, in fact, the cause of the things that were happening, or what to do about it, she eventually put the doll away in the closet. Instead of reselling it after a couple months, she ended up keeping it for a year. In 2004, Kathy put the doll back up on eBay, claiming that the doll wasn't haunted, but was, in fact, cursed. Only this time, it wasn't simply a claim she was making for the sake of selling a doll. She sincerely believed it was. I am the person who bought the doll from Greg. I was living in Ireland at the time. The doll did not move on its own, or smell of Pampers, or speak, but the doll is cursed. I know this. While I had it, 2 people I knew died within 6 months of each other under tragic circumstances, and crazy stuff used to happen in my Dublin home. We had a roommate who was a health nut, climbed mountains, dove, and was a very athletic guy. Harold was stored in the closet in his room. 3 months after moving in, Stefan was diagnosed with lung cancer and died a few weeks later. He had moved in with us because Ronnie, the woman who he was living with, asked to see the doll one day when she was at my house the weekend before she went to Amsterdam. She fell down a flight of stairs while she was there and died instantly. Also, one day I heard a crash coming from the bathroom. I went in there only to find that everything had fallen out of the linen closet, and everything landed perfectly folded and stacked. As fate would have it, this would be the first in a long line of unexplained occurrences that happened to anyone who owned Harold throughout the years. If you are interested in learning more about Harold, we recommend Harold the Haunted Doll by Anthony Quinetta, which recounts the terrifyingly true story of one of the world's most sinister dolls. Number 2. Annabelle. Annabelle is an alleged haunted doll housed at the Occult Museum of self-described paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. According to the Warrens, a student nurse was given the doll in 1968. They say the doll behaved strangely, and that a psychic medium told the student that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a deceased girl named Annabelle. The student and her roommate tried to accept and nurture the spirit-possessed doll, but the doll reportedly exhibited malicious and frightening behavior. It was at this point that the Warrens say they were first contacted, moving the doll to their museum after pronouncing it demonically possessed. To this day, the doll remains in a glass box at the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. Since Annabelle has been in the Warrens' possession, there have been several occurrences that have gone unexplained throughout the years. A priest from Hartford once visited the Warrens' home and threw the doll across the room, proclaiming God was more powerful than the devil. On his way back to the rectory, he got in a serious accident with a tractor trailer. Also, decades ago, a museum visitor ignored the warnings and banged on the doll's box. It was reported that he died in a motorcycle crash shortly after. On more than one occasion, Ed and Lorraine Warren have gone on record to state that Annabelle is the most dangerous item that they have in their museum. But what do you think? This brings us to our pick for the world's most haunted doll. Number 1. Robert the Doll. The story of Robert the Doll dates back to the early 1900s when a young boy named Eugene Robert Otto was given a one-of-a-kind handmade doll by the servant that worked for his parents in his home. Eugene, who everyone called Gene, named the doll Robert and quickly became attached to his new friend. While he seemed like an ordinary cloth doll, it wasn't long before Robert was involved in strange and somewhat terrifying events. The first hint that something out of the ordinary was happening was one night when Gene, who was only 10 years old, awoke to find Robert the doll sitting at the end of his bed staring at him. Moments later, his mother was awakened by his screams for help and the sound of furniture being overturned in her son's bedroom. Gene cried out for help, begging for his mother to rescue him. When she finally was able to wrench the locked door open, she saw poor Gene curled up in fear on his bed, his room in shambles, and Robert the doll sitting at the foot of the bed. "Robert did it," were the only words that Gene could get out, the same words he would later use many times throughout his childhood when something strange, mysterious, or destructive would happen. Nobody knows for sure why or how this child's plaything could actually wreak havoc on a child's bedroom or do anything at all. After all, it was just a toy, right? But the weird and inexplicable didn't stop at the one occurrence. Gene's parents would often hear their son upstairs talking to the doll and getting a response back in a totally different voice. They reported seeing the doll speak and witnessing his expression change. Giggling and sightings of Robert running up the steps or staring out the upstairs window were also reported. Robert continued to live with Gene throughout his lifetime, and after Gene's parents died, he moved back into their home with his wife, Anne. Gene decided that the doll needed a room of his own and placed him in the upstairs room that had a window overlooking the street. Anne was uneasy with Robert in the house, and although she couldn't put her finger on it, she wanted Jean to lock the doll up in the attic, where he could do no harm. Jean conceded, and as one could imagine, Robert the doll was not happy with his new digs. Soon, visitors to the home heard footsteps in the attic, the sounds of somebody pacing back and forth, and devilish giggling. Neighborhood children reported seeing Robert watching them from the window in the upstairs bedroom, and told accounts of the doll actually mocking them as they walked to school. When Jean heard this, he immediately went to investigate, knowing that he had locked Robert in the attic and there was no way he could be sitting in the window upstairs. To his surprise and horror, when he opened the door to the bedroom, there was Robert, sitting in the rocking chair by the window. Jean locked Robert back up in the attic several times, each time discovering him again sitting by the window in the same upstairs bedroom. After that, it wasn't long before Robert the doll was given away, and today he lives in the East Martello Fort, where visitors from all over the world can come and see him. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you can stay up to date on all the spooky content. Also make sure that you look out for our next video on how to replicate these doll designs onto your face.